Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of Oxnard Live. I'm your host, Daniel Chavez Jr. Well, for our second guest of 2022, I'm very excited to have someone who I sit as a colleague on the Ventura County Transportation Commission and someone who I've actually been opposite of in the Oxnard City Council chambers.
Yeah, that's right.
Please join me in welcoming Ventura County Supervisor, Ms. Carmen Ramirez of the 5th District, or should I say Madam Chair of the board, as the selection rotation put the 5th District in that position. Congratulations and welcome to Oxnard Live. You're definitely no stranger to Oxnard Live. You've been on here a few times.
Yeah. Well, thank you for the invitation. I'm here to just talk and answer your questions. You can give me hard questions.
Hard questions. That was one thing that I really enjoyed when you were running for county supervisor, and Oxnard Live, it was still very new. We were interviewing all the candidates, and when I extended the invitation to you and both Tim, you were the only one that accepted it at that time. And the first that you asked was, ask me the tough questions. No other candidate ever asked that. They just said, oh, you're not going to be too mean to me, right? But you were the only one that said, ask me the tough questions. Why was that? Why did you feel that you wanted those tough questions?
Because if you're just answering the softballs, you're not showing that you're really thinking about the problems and challenges we have. And there aren't a lot of easy answers right now, especially. Maybe there never have been. But if you just think, oh, I'll just, say, well, we're all going to be nice and, do the easy things, we're not going to get anywhere. So we got to address the challenges and the hard things. And believe me, in Oxnard City Council, we did. And luckily we pushed through to the other side. And I think the city's in decent shape now. We have a ways to go, but we had those structural deficits. We had infrastructure failing, and these were hard questions, and people would like to have easy answers. Right now we're in COVID, and we don't have a magic wand to make it go away and everything go back to normal. But we have to listen to each other, but we have to really be ready to do the hard thing. It's not hard to wear a mask, though, believe me. And for most people, getting a shot, getting a vaccination, that's not hard. But because, let me go off on a little tangent here, but if we don't do that, right now our hospitals are in trouble because people did not get vaccinated, and we have breakthroughs. And I know people sick of all the ages, little kids, adults, some elected leaders, friends, family. It's scary. So let's do the hard things, and then maybe we can get to where life's a little easier for people. Hope.
Absolutely. And you brought up a good point in regards to our hospitals. And I know that's not really the whole conversation tonight, is to talk about that, but you bring up a good point, because a friend of mine, him and his wife, they're up there in their 80s. They were hospitalized as COVID. They're vaccinated, but they said that it was so overcrowded that they had to stay in the emergency room the whole entire time that they were there, because there just wasn't any rooms available. So it's a very serious issue right now with COVID, and this Omicron is definitely moving a lot faster than people want to believe. And I see it all over social media. It's just the flu. The flu don't put you in the hospital the way that, and in the numbers of people that are ending up in the hospital. And I believe Orange County had 3 confirmed cases of children under the age of 5 that have passed away due to COVID. So it's definitely a serious thing.
Well, I think the reality is, when I was in high school, my best friend went home one day and found that her mother had died of flu. So flu can hurt you too. It can kill you if you have certain lack of immunity, or it just hits you in the wrong time. And that's certainly what even vaccinated people are finding. I really reject this idea that it's just the flu or just the cold. It might be for you. You're lucky you don't have these problems, health problems. You're not suffering from some of these sicknesses that people, especially in our community, have: diabetes, high blood pressure, other kinds of problems that make you vulnerable. We have a lot of diabetes in our community for reasons of diet and just not getting good exercise, nutrition. And the consequences can be fatal. And folks like that, if they get exposed to this virus, they could wind up in serious trouble. We had a presentation last week at the Board of Supervisors about how our hospitals are doing. The emergency rooms are full. Some ambulances arrive and they cannot unload the patient because there's no room in the emergency room. There's no room in the ICU. Now, but I also said, be careful out there getting in accidents. Don't have a heart attack. Don't have your child get sick with something else. There's no room in the hospital. So let's just try to be as careful as we can. If you haven't been vaccinated, please do it. Do it for yourself, your family, your community, because it is super easy to get this. People are even trying to be careful. They get it, and it's not pretty. It's not pretty. So I won't go off on that too much. Let's just be considerate of each other. Right now, I'm in my office. Nobody's here. It's nighttime. The county has gone to the extent possible remote because we know that some of us have to be here. I don't have to be here right now. I could do it from home, but I just wanted to be in my office tonight. Nobody's here. Nobody's spreading around. But I'm lucky. Not everybody can do this. Farm workers, people work in restaurants, people work in hospitals, people work in retail. We expect to be able to go to the store and get what we need. And those people really putting themselves at risk. So let's be kind.
No, absolutely. And the first thing that popped into my head, and it's still keeping kind of in line with the COVID thing. You, as was already mentioned, you are going to be the chair, or you already are the chair of the Board of Supervisors. And you ultimately are the face of Ventura County for the year. Of course, as we both know, you need the support of the other supervisors on any item that requires action. But because we're seeing such this surge in COVID cases, is there any plans for locking down the county again and going back to what 2020 was?
No, there's no plans because I think, first of all, it just couldn't fly. People would really resist that. And we do need to keep our economy going. We need to keep our kids in school as long as it's relatively safe. And I think it is pretty safe. I think the schools are trying to do a good job. You're a parent, you would know better. Your kids in school, Daniel?
My daughter, she is in school, the Oxnard Elementary School District. They are still in person, but I also have heard, and I'm sure you've heard, there are a couple of districts that have switched over to remote learning. The Conejo Unified School District has done that, and as well as the private sector of Santa Clara High School has also switched over to.
When you're in high school, I think it's a lot easier to be remote. When you're a little kid, this is so tough. These children may be paying the price that the rest of us are not paying. I can work remotely. You can't work remotely. I know what you do. And you have to be really careful, and you have to be careful for your passengers and your family and your kids. But for little kids, it's a real problem, and they can't all get vaccinated. But going back to being chair, being in chair means you are the one supervisor this year who's perhaps the face of the county. And you have to really be careful because you have to speak for everybody. You can't just go off on your own personal agenda. I try not to, though I certainly have an agenda to move our county forward. And I think the other supervisors do as well. We don't all agree on every single thing, but I think generally speaking, we're moving the county forward and trying to make good decisions. But there's no lockdown coming. There's just a plea, a request, a begging for people to be considerate of others, to wear your mask, don't gather, don't go anywhere. If you're sick, if you have symptoms, get tested. Now, we can, if we live in a home, and this is my concern for our homeless, unsheltered folks, you can ask for tests to be delivered. I've done that. You can do it online. It's in English and Spanish. I'll put it up on my Ventura County Supervisor, Carmen Ramirez. I think that's what it is. I don't look at it. Somebody else looks at it. It tells you how to do it. USPS, go to United States Postal Service, and you can find the link to get those tests. They're free. They'll come to your home within a few days, I hope. And they are, again, they're free. I believe they're PCRs, and they have to be, I think they have to be sent out and come back. I went to get a test today just to be safe. I haven't been exposed. I was exposed about a month ago and I got tested, it was negative. Some people are getting false negatives. They show up positive a couple days. So this virus is really doing a number on us, and we don't all know how it's working. We just know we have to be careful. And if you have symptoms, stay home, keep a watch on your temperature, try to talk to your doctor, but don't go to the emergency room unless you're in serious trouble, because might not be able to help you. You might wind up waiting for hours for a bed. That would be tragic. So
Absolutely.
anyway, I'm going to do my best to be the chair, like being the mayor or being the chair of a committee. You have to respect your colleagues, let them have their say first, say what you want, see if you can get the votes to support you.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, definitely you are, you're entering into a realm that is way different from local government, such as the city of Oxnard. You served on the city of Oxnard's council from 2010 up until your election to the Board of Supervisors in 2020. And in that time, you spend a majority of that time as the mayor pro tem, which is the second person in charge. In the absence of the mayor, you would lead the meetings or represent the council in the absence of the mayor. How has the transitional been? Because you went from something that was part-time, even though me and you, we both know that a city council member is not really part-time when you take in consideration of all the commissions and the committees that you represent the city on. It ultimately ends up being a full-time job. Now you're in the Board of Supervisor position, which is essentially a full-time job of addressing constituent issues and keeping the county moving.
Well, it's a full-time job and it has full-time pay, I'm happy to say. So I commiserate with my colleagues on city councils. They put in almost just as much time, mostly do not have staff. I had no staff. My colleagues at the council have no staff to help them do anything. You have to answer every phone call, every email, every letter, you have to be there. So I think being on city council is pretty tough for people. And I think being on a school board might be tougher, especially these days, because parents want accountability. And while the other different thing is the county has many more resources than a city. The financing is very different. And it's been great because I know when I wanted to see some program happen or not be cut back at Oxnard, the question would then come, well, okay, where do you want to cut then? We're gonna fund this. Where are we going to cut? That was very painful, but we had to do it. We still have some scars from some of the cuts, but with Measure E and the funding that came from ARPA and maybe some other things, where the city is recuperating from that time. We had a structural deficit, and you may remember that we had a struggle to get the utilities, our enterprise funds properly funded so we could provide essential services to people, which are costly. You have to pay people to do the work, and there's a lot of demand out there. They're poaching of our employees, if people can get paid better and have better working, less, not working conditions, but less work in other cities, perhaps. And you have to have reserves, you have to have investment in capital resources and day-to-day maintenance. And these are the complications that you get to understand when you're in government. You know, when I started council, I thought, hey, I want to see this happen right away. I want to see this fixed. And I think a lot of people come into that. You know, my lights go out here. We do energy saving. So I have to move around to become, sure, no, where's that newspaper? Anyway.
I do a little dance with it just to trigger them back.
So it might go totally dark, but I'll stab the camera. So, but at the county's resources depend on fees, yes, but property tax. And the city gets a very small part of property tax. The schools get property tax divided up and fees. So, and you can't raise taxes. You cannot raise taxes. The things that we pay for, water, sewer, trash, those are not taxes. That's the cost of delivering the service. So I always want to encourage people to understand city municipal finance and county finance and maybe state finance, because people will say, why do we have potholes? Why do our streets look this way? Landscaping is just a whole different funding source. And of course, if you're in a newer city, like some of our cities, you know, Moore Park, pretty new city, has almost brand new infrastructure, pipes, electricity, all this stuff. We don't, you know, we have infrastructure from the founding, which might be 1903. You know, I have looked into manhole covers and seen bricks down there. It shouldn't be bricks, I don't think. And a lot of our homes are old and need rehab, and all of this costs money. We don't always have it. So my goal as the supervisor for Greater Oxnard is to make sure Oxnard, the people of my district, which is some unincorporated Oxnard, but mostly the city of Oxnard, get a fair share of county resources as they are divvied up. And that would be public health is number one. Health is number one. The clinic system, the behavioral health system, these are the most important parts of our county, keeping people healthy. And they're right now, I'd say, the most stressed. We also have public safety. We have the sheriff. We have fire. Fire department works with the other agencies to put out these terrible fires we've had. We have the watershed, protect our river, our water sources. And I'm on all these committees. And thankfully, I have staff. I didn't have staff at the city of Oxnard. Let me just see if I can turn these lights on. That's all it took.
That's all it took. You know, Carmen, you bring up a lot of great points in highlighting the differences between local government versus the county. Yes, everybody that thinks I'm going to get on city council, I'm going to make all these changes, they're going to happen overnight, it's going to be great. I thought that when I first ran, that, oh, we'll do this, we'll do that. But there is a process that you have to follow, and there's trade-offs. What gets funded, what doesn't get funded. And during your time on the city council, you, along with a few other members on the council, had to make really tough decisions. And you brought up a good one in regards to the utilities, the wastewater and water, and ultimately end up being a target of a recall. Because of taking those steps of being responsible and ensuring that when people turn on their taps, that there was water. When people flushed the toilet, it went somewhere. And you were ultimately having to make those tough decisions. Currently on the board of supervisors, there hasn't really been any big, tough decision-making issues, but you were potentially almost about to be recalled or go through the process of being recalled, but because of the election timeframe, it didn't go through, and only Supervisor Parks was actually the target of that, and it failed because it was just baseless. Where do you see the biggest challenges for your time that you could potentially see that you're going to have to make those same tough choices that still continues to support the health and well-being of all Ventura County residents?
Well, I will say that we in Ventura County have a big challenge with, I will say, equity and the ability of folks in our community, especially our young people, to thrive. Jobs, education, housing, all of that is a real burden, especially on our young people, not just our young people, but especially them, because they're just starting out and things are so different now. I like to say when I was in college decades ago, I could rent an apartment all by myself. It was an apartment. I paid my bills. I got small student loans. I could walk to college. I went to Cal State LA, and I got some scholarships. But now, no, I don't think anybody could rent their own apartment on what I was living on. And that is it's nice to live with your family, but it's not nice to be overcrowded. You can't study, you can't sleep. I think it leads to a lot of lack of peace of mind. So I'm really focused on housing too. And I do think housing has to be in the right place. We can't sprawl. We need to preserve our open space. And that's the county has spoken. The people of the county have spoken. But just speaking about recalls, it's such a cheap shot. Well, it's not really cheap. It gets really expensive. We had the gubernatorial recall. There were 3 recalls going. I know people were on the verge of being recalled and they haven't been able to get the signatures. And I'm really glad of that, whether or not I agree with that individual or not and their policies, because it's so costly for the public. You elect somebody, you don't like their votes or what, they haven't committed a crime. They haven't done anything like embezzle or steal money or murder somebody. Wait till the next election, organize, get your candidate and go out there and do it. But what happened with Supervisor Parks was really unfortunate because she was doing what we were all doing, was supporting the health of the people, and not just the people, but also our democracy. So it was really unfortunate. I was very pleased that they did not succeed. It's very costly to the people to, she has 1 year left of her term. It would have been crazy to have a special election maybe in June when the election for the new supervisor is going to be also the primary in June and the general in November. So, be careful, folks, signing petitions for anything. We learned that in Oxnard. You don't know who's supporting it. You don't know what the consequences are. And we have some more coming down the pike. Just really be careful before you sign these things, because it can have very unfortunate and costly consequences. But enough of that.
So let me ask you, Carmen, the county just had wrapped up the redistricting process.
Yes.
And it is something that cities across the state is undergoing. Cities, counties, it just had this assembly, the congressional, all of that was done also. Way different from the first time that the city of Oxnard was legally challenged to switch over from an at-large to district-based election. Now, the 5th district did shift. It's not having a lot of the same communities as it had before, in particularly El Rio, Nyland Acres. Now it has Port Hueneme in the 5th district, whereas it wasn't part of the 5th district. It was part of the 3rd district. So it's more of the mid-southern portion of Oxnard and encompasses everything else. But you have been on the Board of Supervisors for nearly a year now. What projects are you having to turn over now that you were currently working on in areas that are no longer part of your district?
Well, let me just say that I think the map that for District 5 is very superior to the previous map, despite the loss of El Rio and Island Acres. I don't feel good about that because this community really needs lots of attention. I was giving it lots of attention, and some of those issues have been turned over to Supervisor Long, who now represents El Rio and Island. But now Oxnard is with Port Hueneme. To me, it didn't make any sense for the city of Port Hueneme and even the port of Hueneme, that is Oxnard Harbor District, to be with Camarillo. Why would that be? We're next to each other. The cities are next to each other. It just, it's illogical. So my camera keeps wanting to escape. The lights go out. So anyway, we'll just deal with that.
Lights go out, cameras moving.
Yeah, well, we just deal with it. There we go. So also now in District 5 is Cal State Channel Islands, but not Oxnard College. But wherever, if you're a supervisor in this county, you have to take care of these community assets. Oxnard College belongs now to Supervisor Long, but the students who go there, a lot of them are from District 5. Cal State Channel Islands, it's in District 5. But students go from all over the county and beyond the county to the university. So this is how I felt at Oxnard, the city of Oxnard. I could represent District 2, which is from about 2nd Street all the way north to River Park. But if I was ignoring as a council member what's going on in the rest of the city, you're not doing your job. Your job is to look out for the best interests of the whole city. So sometimes be voting for things that supported the other districts instead of just saying, oh, well, this has nothing to do with it's like my foot hurts, but I'm going to not pay attention to it. It's going to affect you sometime. And it's also pay me now or pay me later. If we let problems really fester elsewhere, sometimes you can't do too much about it immediately. It's going to take your resource. It's like unsheltered folks. This is an issue that affects us all. It takes our resources, spending thousands of dollars. I work with Supervisor Levere to get folks out of the riverbed before the rains came. I kept thinking, I've seen that river when it rains. It's full of water, it's cold, people could drown. Lots of people are living down there. And I don't know if they've gone back because we don't have a lot of places for people to go. But I thought we better do something to get them out. And we got a task force together. We got homeless services, social services, medical services, behavioral health, and our sheriff's department and public works clean out the trash, let people know they only had a little bit of time to get their stuff together, and then to ask for assistance. You didn't have to take assistance, but it was available and get it. Now, it wasn't enough for everybody, and it wasn't ultimately permanent, but we didn't have anybody drowning in the river. So that was a priority for me. We had people down there with children. We had pregnant women. We had people who are elderly and sick. We had veterans. It's really unfortunate, but that is the situation that if you don't take care of it now, it's going to get bigger. The problem's going to be bigger, harder to address. That's what the city of LA is facing, and start overwhelming you. You got to, put the antiseptic now, keep the infection down, and try to get healing. So it almost has to be one of our first priorities. How to get people.
Yes. I'm sorry, Carmen, but let me ask about that, because you brought up a good point in regards to our homeless population. LA County, it's just running rampant. It is just completely out of control. They've been in the news recently due to 2 homeless individuals, actions ultimately resulting in deaths of 2 individuals. One was a 70-year-old nurse, and another one was a college grad. We don't have those same issues here in Ventura County, but what are we doing to try to address the homeless issue? To me personally, it feels like it's more of a whack-a-mole scenario. We set up some type of services, but then they just move to somewhere else. And then we go over there and then they move into somewhere else. The city of Oxnard recently just agreed upon, or a few months ago, the navigation center that's supposed to be taking place in downtown Oxnard. There was talks about Thousand Oaks buying property. It might have been somewhere else, and I apologize. About property for the homeless shelter. The city of Ventura had purchased a building a few years ago for a shelter. But what are we doing? It feels like we're all doing our own little thing as opposed to working together to finally address it. And I understand that we're never going to solve it, but how do we get a handle on it so that we don't end up like LA County?
Well, first of all, we don't have enough housing for people that they can afford. And that's not just for currently homeless people. People right now, they're crowded. Rents have gone up. We have no rent control. We have, a little bit of a cap on it, and we don't have enough housing stock, especially for people who'd like to have some privacy. I think the city of Oxnard is doing a really good job in approving housing in the right area, which would be downtown core. I see the housing going up in my neighborhood. I know they vet it with the community around it and go forward. It looks good. It's still expensive, and not everybody can afford to be a homeowner. And I think this is really tragic. The other thing that I know is happening elsewhere, I don't know about here, some very large corporate interests are buying single family homes and multifamily apartment buildings. And what that means to me as a person who did landlord tenant law for a long time is people will not be able to become homeowners. They will always have to be renters. And when you're a renter, you have no stability. You are potentially could be evicted 30 days, 60 days, or whatever the end of your lease is. And that's very bad for children. It's very bad for just generally stability. And of course, no rent control, so rents could go up. Not a whole lot you can do about it. You can keep moving, and some people are moving to the street. So I think we need to increase our housing stock. I am a supporter of SOAR. I got it on our ballot in Oxnard to have the protection go to 2050. And 70% of the people of Oxnard supported that. The rest of the county where they had SOAR ordinances, they supported it. Our county supports it. But for me, it doesn't mean no growth. It means growth in the right place. We want to keep our agriculture going. We want our open space. But we're in a transition where people, I think especially younger people, older people, they need a starter townhouse or a studio. Older people may need to downsize, and we need a lot in between for the families. So I am encouraging housing. I am not saying, oh, don't build here. There's some places we should not be building in the fire zones. I think it's pretty tricky now to build on the coast. We have sea level rise coming. I'm in a working group on that. So it's not always the best investment to have to build in hazardous zones. I think it does worry people because we do have water issues. We have to be more conservative with our precious water resources. We really need to change our landscape. We, generally speaking, we do not need a lot of turf in our homes. I think turf is good for children to play on in schools, but do we need these lawns that take a lot of water? There's a lot of alternatives, and there's incentives for that right now. So housing, we got to have more housing. Until we have more housing, we're gonna have more still have a lot of people on the street. The city of LA, I followed this. They passed a measure to put into housing the homeless, but there's been a lot of resistance in neighborhoods to build that housing. So I think this is what we see. And if you read the newspapers of Los Angeles, you'll see that the council members there are trying, but they run up against a lot of obstacles. And right now we have some obstacles. Some people are really afraid of the navigation center, or what was the Vagabond, which is now Casa Aliento. I think these are great things. And I always would tell people who complain to me, I say, well, would you rather see people sleeping on the sidewalk in front of your house? Really? You know, do you want people to just be banished from society and go live in the mountains or something? You know, we have to be realistic. Mostly these are folks from our community, for whatever reason, mental health, addiction, pricing, they don't have housing. And sometimes people can't take care of themselves either. And that's another thing we have to put money into, supportive services.
Absolutely. Carmen, man, I wish we can continue this conversation, but we've already hit that 40-minute mark, and
It looks already dark.
And it's already dark. You see that? But you brought up a lot of great points in regards to the efforts that are being done in order to try to get those housing projects. But I believe a lot of the concerns also, and I know for a fact, because I work in LA County, the biggest issues from those residents in that area when it comes to the housing is the fact of the lax rules and regulations on these particular projects. They're what is called the low-bearing shelters, or low-bearing
housing first.
Yeah, housing. It makes it very, very hard for them to be able to trust it. So I know those are the big concerns. And again, we can continue this conversation a lot longer, but we've already reached our time limit. So is there any final words that you want to give? And definitely we will be having you come back, because I do want to continue this conversation. These are very great topics. We talked about COVID, we talked about the county and the redistricting, on addressing services and projects that actually matter to the residents. We briefly touched on that. And then we're talking about housing and how it's so important that to protect our open spaces, but at the same time, be able to have people live in apartments that a single bedroom doesn't cost over $2,200, which I find is absolutely ridiculous. $2,200 for a single bedroom on a wage that of like $15-17, you're not going to be in that apartment for a very long time. But is there any final words as we wrap up tonight's show?
Well, I would just say check out my Facebook page, Ventura. It's at Ventura's County Supervisor Carmen Ramirez. So for updates, and you can get in touch with me that way. Other people know how to get in touch with me. We have to stay tuned. We have a lot of challenges. I encourage people to get informed about all of these different issues. If you think something's easy, we could just do it, check it out. You'll see that it's a little more complicated than that. Get to know your council members, your supervisors, communicate with them, and we'll have a good conversations about what can be done. And again, things take time. There's no miracles, but if everybody gets more informed, I think we'll make progress. So there's so much more to talk about, but here we are. So thanks for the opportunity.
And again, that her Facebook page is Ventura County Supervisor Carmen Ramirez. It is on Facebook, so be sure to go like that, and so that you stay up to date with all of the progress and updates and information within the district, for the county, and even just important information that you need to know about as a resident of this great state.
Great county, great city.
Great county. Exactly. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Oxnard Live. We have joining us Ventura County Supervisor Carmen Ramirez of the 5th District. Be sure to join us on February 2nd as we have Dr. Gillespie of the Ventura County Community College District and one of the trustees joining us for a conversation on how are they supporting students, how is the transition during COVID, people going to college, people transitioning from community college to the universities, and then the programs that are available out there. So That's all right here in Oxnard Live, all live and 100% real.